I think I'd just start by saying that the President of the United States could not have selected a better person to serve as the ambassador to the State of Israel. You are, as they say, the right man at the right time.
Thank you very much, Alex. It's a great honor to serve the President and the United States of America, and I'm thrilled to be here with all of these fantastic people. The panel before was terrific. I want to say something in reaction. One of the things that I loved was the gentleman who is the satirist. And I think, without a doubt, when there are horrible things being said, the best response is often to use humor and to use ridicule, because it's such a powerful tool. If we act like that we are hurt by what someone says to us, people are going to continue to do those things because they want us to hurt. When we act like, doesn't hurt me, but what a ridiculous thing you said, and here's why it's ridiculous, and we respond with humor and ridicule, it is a very powerful weapon.
And I think that one of the reasons why I said you're the right man for the job at the right time is because you've been to Israel so many times before becoming ambassador, maybe over 100 times. So you understand Israel, but you also understand what's going on in the United States, and you also understand media, you understand policy. And what we're seeing now is on both sides of the political and social spectrum, both the right and the left, this distancing from the State of Israel, support of Israel, and also this creeping anti-Semitism. And I want to start on the left. And what we're seeing with the election of Zoran Mandani in New York is this fusion on the one hand with Marxism and also anti-Semitism. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about what you think is going on the left and how we work to try to combat that.
Well, let's get real clear that what we're dealing with is Jew hatred. If we use the word anti-Semitism outside of our own circle, we certainly can use it here. It always leads to a level of ambiguity. But if we just say, look, this is Jew hatred, why do people hate Jews? The real answer is a spiritual one. That may be offensive to some people, but when people hate God, they're naturally going to hate people who throughout history, from the time on Mount Moriah right here in this city, have represented the ones that God first spoke to in a very personal and real way and said, you're going to take this message, you're going to create this magnificent land, and through you, the world is going to be blessed. Well, now, if you don't believe there's a God, or you want to believe that you are your own God, or that the environment is your God, you'd rather worship the creation rather than the Creator, if you reject basic spiritual premises because you had rather live in a secular world that denies the very existence of God, then your first target is naturally going to be Jews. Now, what Christians have to understand is the next target is going to be them. And that's why I often try to remind people, like it or not, we are in this together. And I hope that people will come to understand that the root of Jew hatred is in fact not political, it is not economic, it is spiritual.
I think many of the people here, saw what was happening on the political left for a long time, and we're very sad to see how the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and the American left just slid away from Israel. And I think people were much more surprised, specifically since October 7th, to see what's happening on the right side of the political spectrum, this sort of American firstism, this fusion of libertarianism, isolationism, and like I said, I think that a lot of people have been surprised by it. Why do you think it's metastasized so quickly, and what do you think are the talking points that people in this room can use to sort of combat it and maybe control the damage?
It's grown very rapidly because it's profitable. Let's not kid ourselves. There's money to be made by being a contrarian. There's money to be made by being divisive and provocative. I don't know if all of these loud voices are doing it solely for money, and I cannot tell you where the money comes from. I wish I could. If I could, I would tell you. But it doesn't make sense. Let's just take Tucker Carlson, that a man in his mid-50s, who I've known since 1991, when his first job out of college was in Little Rock, Arkansas, working for a newspaper. I worked with him for 6.5 years at Fox News in New York. Suddenly, in a very short period of time, a switch is flipped, and he has a completely different worldview, and his ideological base has completely changed. That's not normal for someone in his 50s. It just isn't. What happened? I don't know. Is it that it is more profitable for him to do what he's doing now than what he was doing when he was at Fox News? He wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't. There's got to be, on all of our part, a willingness to push back, stand up, speak up, but to do it with facts, but to do it not with a sense of anger and hostility. I think that's a huge mistake. If all we do is engage in the same level of temperature, then we're not going to be able to be successful. We need to calmly, but with a sense of assurance and confidence, push back on some of the more outrageous things. I'll give an example. He made a speech a few months ago, and he made the comment. He said, everybody knows that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent. Now, he said this in front of probably 1,200 people. I wonder how many of those 1,200 actually knew that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent. I would say no one, because to anyone's knowledge, it has never been proven, documented, that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent. I was a debater in high school and in college. One of the courses that I took was rhetorical theory. It's basically learning how to use language as a form of, if you will, propaganda, to sell your argument. When I listened to what he said, it occurred to me that is classic propaganda tool. Here's what I mean. If you say something, everybody knows, but everybody doesn't know, and no one in the audience is willing to stand up and say, no, sir, I don't know. Why don't you tell me how I should know that? If no one does that, everyone sits there and they nods. How come? Because everybody wants to act like, oh yeah, I knew that. Of course I did. It is a tool that we need to push back on, and when someone says everybody knows whatever that everybody knows is supposed to be, we say, no, we don't know that. Why don't you school us? Why don't you give us some information and give us the footnotes so that we can look it up? Because actually, nobody here knows that, because it's preposterous. We've got to answer the folly with fact.
Now, some of the preposterous statements that have really caught a lot of wind since October 7th have been the charges of war crimes against Israel, charges of genocide against Israel. And we've seen that play itself out in the International Criminal Court and elsewhere. And I wanted to know from your view and with regard to U.S. policy, how do these charges and arrest warrants issued against Prime Minister Netanyahu for genocide, how does that affect America and other countries' abilities to defend themselves?
I'm very proud of the United States. We have put sanctions on people like Francesca Albanese, one of the most horrible voices in the world today. We have also declared that the ICC is a rogue organization. The U.S. has no part of it, and we have put sanctions on people associated with the ICC and the ICJ. We will continue to do that, and I think that is the right course for the U.S. When we hear ridiculous allegations, Israel is a genocidal nation, I simply say, really? Then they are really, really bad at it. They're the worst at this that has ever been attempted in history. Because if Israel was genocidal, they could have taken all of Gaza down in about 2.5 hours. Last summer, we saw what Israel is capable of. They took on a nation 10 times its size, not only in population, but many, many times over its size geographically, and they kicked their ever-loving rear ends in the space of 12 days, didn't lose a single airplane, a single pilot, or a single soldier, and they did that. If they wanted to commit genocide, do you think they could do it in the space of Gaza, which is the size of Las Vegas, Nevada? Of course they could have. They didn't. Why? Because they're not a genocidal nation. It's ridiculous to say that of them.
I'm glad you referenced the 12-day war with Iran, and obviously we know what is looming large over the elephant in the room, so to speak.
We do? See, there you go. Everybody knows. So
everybody knows. It's in the news. But because this is an anti-Semitism conference, I think that we should talk about Iran and how the Ayatollahs are the worst violent anti-Semites in the world today. And how do we make that case to the world and the American people?
We got to remind the world that basically many, many plates of poison are being served by Hamas, the Houthis, by Hezbollah. But all of those plates of poison came out of the same kitchen, Tehran. And if you want to stop the poison, you can change the menu, but it's better to burn the kitchen down and not let them serve those plates anymore.
Many haters of Israel are charging that the United States takes a lot of heat for their support of Israel. And people around the world think that if they support Israel, that they will take heat from others. But actually, what we see here in Israel is that people hate Israel because Israel is an ally and supports the United States. And particularly, we see in Iran, they've always talked about the little Satan and the big Satan. And the big Satan's not Israel, right? So maybe we can talk a little bit about Israel's support for America, Israel's being the installation of the West here in the Middle East, and why that's such a big threat to some of the players in the region.
As a U.S. ambassador to Israel, my primary job is to bring the message of America to Israel. But a part of that job is also to bring our relationship and the value of the partnership between the U.S. and Israel back to America. Because a lot of Americans may hear this nonsense. Why are we doing so much for Israel? They don't do anything for us. To which I want to say, really? Then maybe you should educate yourself. Do you like your cell phone? If you don't like Israel, get rid of your cell phone. You wouldn't have it without Israel, some of the technology. You like car navigation? Do you like medical treatments that have saved the lives of some of your relatives? Well, thank God for Hadassah Medical in Jerusalem or Sheba Medical in Tel Aviv, without which their research and their extraordinary technological advances in oncology and gastroenterology have saved the lives of some of the people that you love. Israel does more for the United States than most Americans will ever understand. And one thing we must remind people, every enemy of Israel is an enemy of the United States. You indeed are the appetizer, but we have always been the entree. For 47 years, Iran has always in the same sentence said, death to Israel and death to America. It is the American flag they put on their buildings and cause their people to march over and stomp on going in to let America know how much they hate us. Well, we need to be very clear that our partnership with Israel is to our benefit. Our abandonment of Israel, our acting like we don't want to be a partner to Israel, is to our ever-loving detriment, and it is only opening a door to these crazed people, not the people themselves, but the leadership, the regime of Iran, that for 47 years has taunted, tortured, and done more to sponsor the horrific things that have killed more Americans than any other group on the entire planet.
The President of the United States likes to keep everybody on their feet with his statements to the media. You've watched the president closely. You've been in the room at some of the most important, consequential meetings on policy, particularly related to the Middle East. Tell me how you think that people here should interpret the president's statements, because one day he can make a very strong statement, the next day he can make a very soft statement, and we're trying to figure out, how do you interpret the president's statements?
Well, let me remind you, Alex, that the first thing I do every day, because the president, as you know, is famous for firing people on Twitter. The first thing I do each morning is I read his Twitter feed to see if I still have a job. So let me be very careful how I answer this, lest I wake up in the morning and I read that it's time to pack up and go back. Selena Zito, who is a wonderful writer in the U.S., had one of the most brilliant statements back in the first term for President Trump. And she said, always take President Trump seriously, but not necessarily literally. And I think that's a good persuasion. I tell people to understand President Trump, recognize that he is the ultimate pragmatist. He is not a political person like you've ever known before. He does not speak the language of ideology that most people are used to when they hear political people speak. In other words, most all politicians operate on the horizontal, left versus the right. and you judge a person by where they are on that spectrum, how far left, how far right. People who live in that genre of politics will limit their solutions to whatever ideology they've ascribed to. So they say, oh, I can only follow policies that are right of center. Or maybe they say I can only follow things left of center. President Trump does not see things horizontally. He sees them vertically. He asks two questions for everything put before him. Will it work, and will it make things better? And if it will work and make things better, but it lands a little left of center, he may go there because he's not horizontal, he's vertical. He does not start his every decision process only within the box of right of center. And that's what makes him not only the most effective president in my lifetime and the most amazing president in my lifetime, perhaps in all of American history, but also the most consequential president when it comes to making the very difficult decisions on things like the Middle East and our foreign policies, because he doesn't say, okay, what is it that we've done for the past 50 years? It's never worked. Let's just keep doing that. Let's put some more oil on that machinery and maybe it will work. He says, if it hasn't worked in this length of time, why are we continuing to do it? Throw it out and start on something better. It's why I love the guy, and I think he's the best president we could possibly have right now.
And a final question here. Tell me, how big a priority is the fight against anti-Semitism to President Trump, and what have been the policies that the United States have put in to fight anti-Semitism and to protect Jews in the United States and around the world?
There's never been a president who's put this focus on it as he has. First of all, his daughter is Jewish. His grandchildren are Jewish. He has a son-in-law who's Jewish. A lot of his friends are Jewish, many of the people around him. But beyond that, let's look at what he's specifically done. No president has done for Israel and the Israel-U.S. relationship, recognizing Jerusalem as the indigenous, everlasting, and biblical homeland of the Jewish people and moving our embassy here. That was massive. Recognizing the Golan Heights as the sovereign territory of the Israeli state. That was big. Recognizing that Israel has a right to build communities in Judea and Samaria, that it is not a violation of international law. Looking at the fact that Israel and the United States need to be partnered up in our push against Iran. But then the more practical, mundane things, right now here in Israel, his appointment to the Department of Justice for Anti-Semitism, Leo Terrell, who is a dear friend and a wonderful human being. He is here in Israel, but he every day is working on behalf of the president to combat anti-Semitism. We have Yehuda Kaplan, who is a rabbi who has been now named as the State Department, Senate-confirmed special envoy to combat Semitism. There's never been an administration, ever, Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter, never been an administration that has put so much focus, attention, and official stamp of approval to say, this is not something that we will just look the other way, hope disappears on its own. We will fight it as a government, as an administration, because it is the morally right thing to do, and because I believe deep down the president believes, as so many of us, if you bless Israel, you will be blessed. And if you curse Israel, you will be cursed. He'd rather America be blessed, and I believe he's well on the way to making that happen.
Ambassador Mike Huckabee, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Huckabee, Ambassador of the United States to Israel. We couldn't ask for a better friend here. Thank you so much.